So with that, let's talk about compliance, right? So there are basically there's these top 5 issues that during an audit come up and kind of bite you. Now, I want you to be really careful here because this isn't the only reasons, but these are the big ones. And if you can solve for these in your strategy, in your privacy programs, in your security programs, this is really important. I want to highlight one thing for you. Make sure that all of this is done as a village. You need to have your security team, your IT security team, and your corporate compliance group involved. And you're going to need more people as we go further into this. But for right now, when you're thinking about, well, what do we got to do to protect ourselves? How do we create this foundation? How do we institute HIPAA? What do we do with NIST 853? These conversations cannot be done without both constituents, IT security and compliance and risk, at the table. And I would even argue you probably want to have your CFO involved because of the cost, and your COO, CMO, CNO involved, your chief medical nursing officers involved, because a lot of these things impact patient care and they impact the economics of the organization. But if we just think about the top 5, again, we don't want to become tunnel vision, but here's a good place for you to start. First thing we hear is that you are not performing annual risk assessments, right? Or you don't have any. So keep in mind, you have to do a risk assessment on a yearly basis. Now, you can do a self-assessment, and there are a lot of good tools, and the government actually even has some self-assessment tools. But be honest with yourself. This is the same as doing the taxes on your own. If you want to go do TurboTax, it's a great tool, but I want you to think about the maturity of that tool and the sophistication of that tool. And it's not that simple, right? It does a great job, but it's guiding you along the way in a very, very controlled manner. So if you're going to do a self-assessment, think about it in the same light as you would in doing your personal taxes. You really don't want to have a situation where a year from now or 2 years from now the IRS calls you. Well, you really also don't want the OCR, Office of Civil Rights, contacting you because the self-assessment you did wasn't as mature or as professional as it should have been. So think about your qualifications, because you're going to be asked, have you done assessments before? How did you know how to answer this question? How did you know you didn't need that? How did you know these were best practices and these weren't? So, one piece of advice I'll give you, whenever I'm thinking about assessments and the way that you deal with your policies and procedures, always picture yourself in a courtroom, right? Think about the fact that you may be deposed, or you may actually be on the witness stand, having to answer for the decisions that are being made. And I can guarantee you that if you think about that end state, which very well could become the reality of life, you will think your security strategy and privacy strategy will be much, much, much more mature than if you think about this in kind of any of the other manners I've seen. So think about how would you feel being deposed or as a witness if you did a self-assessment. If you're confident and you've got the skills to do that, then go for it. If not, you need to look towards somebody or work with an organization that can do a risk assessment, and they have to be performed annually. We'll talk more about those in a moment. We find a lot of organizations have practices. They're changing their passwords. They have firewalls configured. They have some type of monitoring or endpoint protection. But none of it's written down. And here's something to keep in mind. If you have a breach, OCR is going to find out. You're going to have to report it. The Office of Civil Rights is going to know. Now, I think one of the things that most people have in their mind is that OCR is going to show up at your organization, and it's going to be like those news footage that we see on Fox and CNN, and there's going to be a bunch of people with blue jackets that have gold OCR letters on them, and they're going to be carrying boxes and stuff out of your organization into like some van. And that's not what happens, right? Typically, you're going to get an email, certified letter, or phone call, or all three, advising you that they'd like to perform an audit or inquiry into your breach. And then the first thing they're going to ask you for is a copy of your written policies and procedures. And they're going to go through those, and then they're going to look at the evidence that you're going to have to provide to show that you are following those policies and procedures. Now, I want you to, again, put yourself at the end state. In one piece, I told you, hey, listen, you are kind of being deposed, right? Well, here now you're being audited. So I want you to pretend you're being audited. An OCR contacts you, and they're going to be asking you for a copy of your written policies. If you don't have that, well, then you got a big problem right from the get-go. And you could sit there all day you want and say, well, but we know how to do this stuff. That's not going to be good enough, and you're going to have a fine. And more than likely, your cyber liability insurance is going to say, what do you mean you don't have this written down? Where are your policies? Where's your governance? Where's your journals? Where's your audit logs? Where is all that? We don't have that. You've got a bigger problem. Okay, so again, start with that end state. So what did I tell you they're going to want? Your policies and procedures, and then they're going to want what? Evidence. So you need to be thinking about, how does my privacy and security program allow us to provide evidence? Okay, now again, you can do this through an assessor, or you can do it on your own, but you got to have these things. No, I don't care how you do it, you got to need them. Business associates agreements. Okay, let's talk about the scenario we have here. A patient comes to you, it signs an agreement, right? That little form that says, yes, you can have access to my data and use it for clinical, blah, 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 blah. I want you to take away two things from that. One, you are creating a trusted relationship with the patient, a contract with them, okay? And I'm sure your lawyers have looked at it and they're telling you it's good. Here's the second piece. It doesn't matter what your lawyers say, and it doesn't really matter what that piece of paper says. You should have it, should be good, but ultimately, external entities are going to review and understand that the spirit of that was that you were protecting their data. Now, this is really important. We've talked about this trusted relationship between you and the patient, your organization and the patient. So the patient's giving you the data. You're basically saying, okay, you're signing this agreement that I can share this with others. Here's the gotcha. That patient is under the assumption that you are going to share that data with other organizations as long as they maintain the same level of security and privacy that you do. And we always, when we're looking at business associate agreements, find that most business associate agreements do not require the BA. There's no language in there that says you must maintain your security at the same level that we do. And that's a big problem. So I want you to really think about that what you're doing in that trusted relationship as the covered entity is that you are basically, on behalf of that patient, protecting their data with anyone you share with it, and it's on you to make sure that wherever that data goes, inside or outside your organization, it's at the same level as you. And here's why. Let's go back to our deposition example. You're in a courtroom. I'm the attorney, which I'm not, but let's pretend I was. And I say to you, ma'am, sir, did you have XYZ procedure in place? Yes. Why did you have that in place? Because we felt that that was important to have in place to protect the patient's data. Very well. Did your business associate have that in place? Well, I don't know. You don't know, but yet you shared the data. Isn't it important to make sure that whoever you shared that data with would have the same level of security as you did? You said you needed it. You said that you had to have it in place because you felt that was required to protect the data. Did you not take the same measure of protection when investigating that business associate? Well, I guess not. Okay, so where do we go from there? It's a problem. You have to make sure that your business associate agreements are in place and that you are enforcing them. And by enforcing them, that means you are doing at least a yearly assessment of a population of your BAs. Now, there's a lot more to this, right? And some of you are going to say, well, how do we, I have 700 BAs, I have 1,400 BAs, I can't go out and do that. Well, then you need some process that allows you to kind of figure out, hey, based on this group of BAs, we're going to go look at this percentage every year. That's our process. Every year we look at 10% of our BAs, and we actually do a deep dive assessment of every one of them. And the second thing we do is we send a questionnaire to all of them and ask them, what are you doing? Are you maintaining this standard? Now, there's another way that you can do this, and the other way is asking your BAs to give you copies of their risk assessments and their penetration test results, and ask them what they're doing about remediation. And you can document that. The point of this is you need to demonstrate, if you get audited, if you get sued, if you have a cyber liability claim, that you are taking steps to assure that the BAs are maintaining the same level of security as you. And if you can't do that, you've got a gap, okay? Hopefully this makes sense. Every time, by the way, every time we look at a BA agreement, like I said, none of them have language to this. So, you know, it is what it is. The other thing about this patient-CE relationship where the patient's coming in, understand the patient has no legal training. So they're finding a form thinking, and they can make easily the case that, you know, I signed it because I had to get treatment, I was trying to take care of my mom, she needed care, I just signed it. I really didn't know what it said. And we all kind of know what happens when somebody signs something that they don't know what they said, and we can make the case that it was kind of in a duress situation. You may not have been twisting the arm, but the circumstances created stress, and so then guess what? The litmus of that trusted relationship is going to be defined by other people, and that test is going to be rather high. Right. Authorization and audit is inadequate. And this is where we go back to that example of somebody going into the hospital or the practice, the physician practice, and saying, show me everywhere the data is, right? Show me how you're protecting it. Show me who is allowed to see it and not see it. Okay, so authorization and auditing. Where's the data? Where does it live? Where's it going in the organization? And then security awareness training. And here's the thing about this. We'll talk a little more about it later, but HIPAA is not about giving you a requirement that you have to train people once a year on HIPAA. Now, we do that, and it's a good practice. But if we look at NIST 853, which is the underlying framework for HIPAA, what we really are talking about is an ongoing awareness of the responsibility required for privacy and security. So you have to do ongoing training. It's not just once a year, watch a video, take a quiz, and check off some answers, and then you go, okay, yeah, everybody goes through training here. That's not training. That's not, in this day and age, going to cut it, right? And so you need to think about security awareness training needs to be much more. Now, thankfully, it could be simple. It could be posters. It could be an email you send out once a month reminding people to be careful about what they're doing, how they're sharing data. It could be anytime there's a new attack that comes out in the media, you send an update and say, let's be aware of this, let's be careful. So it's not really crazy expensive. You don't have to get everybody in a room and put them through ongoing training, at least not in the end user community. But we'll talk more about this. But those are the 5 things. I'm hoping I'm giving you kind of like some aha moments here, because we're not even into the meat of this. And as you can see, a lot of this, you know, to me, it's kind of common sense. But I'm hoping that I'm trying to take a different approach, maybe a more assertive approach, that leads to you having the ability to concretely say, yeah, I get it. I need to do these things. And here's why, right? Because I don't want to, you know, we're working from the end state backwards, I guess is how to look at it.